About 40 ministers from around the world are expected to meet virtually from the 6th to the 7th of May to discuss action to battle climate change at the 12th Petersburg Climate Dialogue. A key moment is expected to be the public high-level segment on May 6th, which will include UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Well, to tell us more about what we can expect, we chat now to Germany's ambassador to South Africa, Martin Schäfer. Ambassador, good morning. Thanks so much for your time this morning. So, you know, with COVID sort of taking over our thoughts, dominating our thoughts and our days and all of that in every aspect of our lives for the better part of a year, what specifically are we expecting delegates to deal with or focus on this year in their talks about climate change?
Good morning from Pretoria. First of all, maybe the pandemic and climate change have something to do with one another, because both are man-made problems that we have to deal with, and both are problems that we will only overcome if we work together. There's no nationalism involved. The pandemic doesn't look at the passports of its victims, and climate change doesn't do that either. And I think, Southern Africa is one of the victims of climate change. When we project that, say, if we don't act, the temperatures will rise 2% in the course of this century, it would mean for Southern Africa 4%, and that would 4 degrees. And that would mean that for large parts of Southern Africa, for the Kalahari, it would be impossible to live there anymore, and there would be migration, there would be human disaster. So I think the time to act is now. And coming out of the pandemic with all the public money that is available, more or less, depending on the deep pockets of the countries, I think we should think about building back better, as the term has been coined. And that means we have to build a new economy that is based on sustainable energy generation. And I think the good news is there is no contradiction anymore between, getting it green and getting it sustainable and creating growth. Because certainly in South Africa, renewable energies, wind, solar, etc., are cheaper than, the usual forms of energy.
Well, Ambassador, let's talk about Germany's efforts to combat climate change or deal with climate change and how Germany can help South Africa. Like you say, we're one of the victims, one of the many, and what Germany can bring to the table to help South Africa cope with this.
Well, there's a reason, I think, why the German word Energiewende, energy transition, has become an international term, because Germany was one of the first countries to understand that change is necessary and to enact and implement that change. What South Africa will certainly need in the future, and the president has said so, there's a presidential commission, the ministers are very active on it, is energy transition, to get slowly out of fossil energy, out of coal, into renewable energies. And we have started that process approximately 20 years ago. We have days in Germany where the entire electricity production from solar and from wind is enough to fuel the energy of the entire country. And South Africa, if you want, is even better placed than us, because everybody knows that in Germany the sun never shines. In South Africa it does. And if you look at wind maps on the western coast of the Western Cape or the Northern Cape, you will see that it's the best possible opportunities to produce sustainable energy through wind. So what needs to be done is actually, easy to conceive, but it needs to be implemented. South Africa has a good tradition of tenders in renewable energies. I think if the country decides to continue with that path, there needs to be investments being done in the grid. There needs to be investments being done in order to get the decentralized sources of energy right there where they need to go. And I think we are in this together. Germany has been, and I've been talking to a lot of ministers in cabinet about it, is willing to help South Africa go along that way, because we have started this 20 years ago. We have experience to share.
Well, Ambassador, I'm sure that, Germany and South Africa could work very well together to actually do this. But given our track record when it comes to getting projects off the ground, given our track record with corruption, it is right there at the top. I mean, you think South Africa, you're thinking corruption right now when it comes to sorting things like that out. Isn't that a concern for you? I mean, how do you plan to work with the South African government with all of these corruption allegations hanging over us, and that, for a corruption-free process, if you want to help in that way?
It's a very fair point. Of course, corruption is a problem, not only in South Africa, but elsewhere. But I must say the 5 generations of tenders that have gone out in the last 10 years to attract foreign investment and domestic investment on renewables, they haven't been met by corruption. And as far as we know, they have worked and they have done the purpose. And by the way, they have produced results in the last tenders where the price for a kilowatt hour of electricity being produced through renewable means is a lot cheaper than what Eskom, what Kusile, what Medupi can produce. So we have proof, we have evidence, we have experience that it is possible in South Africa. And let me say something else that is very important, because there's a lot of people in South Africa, as in Germany and elsewhere, who are worried that this energy transition might change their own opportunities and perspectives when they are miners, when they're working in the coal industry, when they're working in logistics. We have the experience that with proper planning, with enough care for social justice, it is possible to turn the corner of energy transition without leaving anybody behind. And once again, Germany stands ready to help South Africa with just transition, with developing a smart grid in Eskom and elsewhere that would be able to manage, the energy flows that come from decentralized sources of energy like solar and wind. And we are willing to help South Africa with probably the biggest opportunity that there is with the hydrogen economy. Hydrogen is the fuel, the sustainable green fuel for the economies of the future. And there's probably no country in the world that would be better placed than South Africa with Sasol, with its infrastructure, with its logistics, with all that we find here in South Africa to become a magnificent, huge exporter of hydrogen produced in South Africa, made in South Africa by South African ingenuity to fuel the energy needs of the world. We have to dream big, and we can do it. And Germany stands ready to support South Africa in that quest.